Hello everyone. Welcome back to your English literature class. This is Annapurna Madam and today we are going to be looking at a poem by Roald Dahl, one of my favorite poets, and the poem is called Television. The poem is very futuristic and is very relevant even today. Before we move on to the poem, let us first have a look on the poet's work. Roald Dahl, 1916 to 1990, was a novelist, Norwegian British novelist, short story writer, poet. Dahl served in the Royal Air Force during the Second World War, in which he became a flying ace, an intelligence officer, and rose to the rank of acting wing commander. His works for both children and adults rose to prominence and became popular as one of the greatest storytellers of the 20th century. His first work, children's book, The Gremlins, was published in 1943. The poem Television by British poet Roald Dahl is one of the best known poems of his, which highlights adverse effects of television on the children's mind and inspires them to develop passion for reading. In a humorous manner, the poet brings to light the vitality of books and makes an appeal to the parents to replace the idiot box with a shelf full of good books. The poem consists of a total of 93 lines. These lines are not separated into stanzas. Here they are into meaningful segments for ease of comprehension. Dahl follows the same simple rhyme scheme throughout his poem, that is AA, BB, and so on, in a series of rhyming couplets. Only on one occasion does he diverge from this when he ends the word or the lines 31, 32, 33. The tone of the poem is contrary to what has led the poet to pen his thoughts here. Dahl is a man who lived through a period of great inventions, including that of television. But the poet talks about the importance of books in the lives of children, and most importantly, how this passion for books has been substituted with the addiction for television. In all, the poem focuses on the concern about all the ill effects of television on the young minds of young children. The poet is in opinion that television kills the imagination of children. It also distracts them from the joy of reading. Now, let's get started with the poem Television by Roald Dahl. The most important thing we have learned as far as children are concerned is never let them near your television set, or better still, just don't install the idiotic thing at all. In almost every house we have watched them gaping at the screen. They loll and slop and lounge about and stare until their eyes pop out. Last week in someone's place, we saw a dozen eyeballs on the floor. The poet begins the poem by requesting the parents to keep their children away from the monster called television. In this stanza, he criticizes the increasing craze for television among children. However, as the starting line puts it, he has learned it primarily from other people or from other source, or being the mouthpiece of a number of people. He says the most important thing they have known regarding the children is that they should never be allowed to watch television. Now see, the use of repetition in the third line is never, never, never let. Here the literary device repetition is used. Where do we use repetition? Repetition is the purposeful use of words and phrases again and again to create a smooth flow of emphasis. So the poet says that never allow your children to sit in front of the idiotic thing. Here idiotic thing is referred to the television. So never allow them to sit in front of the thing. He says that in almost every house where they have visited, they have seen the children are gaping, looking, sitting idle and looking at the television. They loll and slop and launch. Loll, slop and launch give the similar idea, to lie or sit in a relaxed or lazy manner. They slop means to eat or drink greedily or noisily. And launch means to spend time relaxing or resting. So this is the position where the children were sitting and moving and watching television without any productive task. He also adds a funny exaggeration, saying that sometimes they stare so hard that their eyeballs pop out of their eyes, and once he saw a dozen eyeballs rolling on the floor in a house he visited. The pair of lines bracketed here in the last lines is an example of a literary device called parenthesis, and a parenthesis is used to added to a sentence or word, either to provide an explanation or to emphasize the point expressed by its precedent, and also mark the use of a hyperbole. What is a hyperbole? Hyperbole is a device that uses exaggeration for emphasis or for effect. So the poet says that sometimes the children stare so hard that their eyeballs fall off, and he has seen a dozen such eyeballs rolling about on the floor in one of the houses. The diversion from the normal track of expression lends an amusing twist to it and makes the reading more interesting and enjoyable. They sit and stare and stare and sit until they are hypnotized by it, until they are absolutely drunk with all shocking, ghastly junk. Oh yes, we know it keeps them still. They don't climb out the window sill. They never fight or kick or punch. They leave you free to cook the lunch and wash the dishes in the sink. But did you ever stop to think? To wonder just exactly what this does to your beloved tot? The poet further says that it is observed that the children get deeply enthralled by the horrible and senseless programs that are displayed on the television. They seem to forget about everything in the world. They forget to play or have fun, which hampers their physical ability and growth. For the parents, it may be a bliss, as the television keeps the naughty children calm. They neither climb the windows nor fight with each other. The mother too can cook or wash the utensils peacefully. Television can be most convenient way of keeping the children occupied. But then the poet raises an important questions for the parents, whether they have ever tried to consider what effect is this idiot box is casting on the soft minds of their beloved ones. Then he moves on to answer in a clear-cut manner, which he writes in the capital letters so as to lay stress on it. The poet has used typography, a literary device. Typography refers to the style, arrangement, or appearance of printed letters on a page. The poet has used hyphens a number of times in the poem, mostly to join the clauses into one single unit of sentence. Although it is written in different lines, but the poet brings a variation in font which changes the reader's focus and emphasis. The poet has used typography in the next few lines. Typography is a literary device which refers to the style, arrangement, or appearance of printed letters on a page. The poet has used variation in font which changes the reader's focus and emphasis. You can see that the given next lines are used in capital letters. The poet says, "It rots the sense in the head. It kills imagination dead. It clogs and clutters up the mind. It makes a child so dull and blind he can no longer understand a fantasy of fairyland. His brain becomes as soft as cheese. His powers of thinking rust and freeze. He cannot think, he only sees." The poet says that watching too much television destroys the sense of the children. They are not able to imagine or visualize things because their minds get choked and with unnecessary facts. They lose their power of judgment and imagination. They stop thinking innovatively. They only depend on the television for learning things. Their childhood fantasies and fairyland stories lose their beauty. The thought process seems to get jammed or rusted. The message is that watching too much television fills up the mind of the children with useless facts, while at the same time destroying their ability to be creative or imaginative. It takes away their ability to think. They can only keep staring at the television screen without any productive task. The concluding lines you mark, "He cannot think, he only sees." Here, the poet categorically opines that television spoils the creativity of children so much that they cannot use their brain and mind to understand things that are abstract and invisible, for which imaginative power is required, as they are absolutely accustomed to see things that appear on the television screen before them. They lose the ability to think of things and situations that are not readily presented before them in concrete form. This indicates the loss of their creativity and imaginative faculty. All right, you will cry. All right, you will say. But if we take the set away, what shall we do to entertain our darling children? Please explain. We will answer this by asking you what use the darling wants to do. How used they keep themselves contented before this monster was invented. Have you forgotten? Don't you know? Now the poet discusses the dilemma the parents would face. He says, if I ask the parents to throw away the television set, they will say, all right. They will question the kind of substitute of entertainment they should provide to children if they take away the television sets from them. The poet answers the parents with a reverse question about what they used to do before the invention of the television. How did they keep themselves occupied and entertained? The poet wants to stress the view that substitutes for television should be thought about, which are as entertaining as the television sets, and even overcome the flaws which the latter has. He further says that the task of finding such substitutes is quite simple. For this, the parents should take their thinking far before when this television set was invented. He therefore asked the parents to recall the past when they were children and were able to find better and far more productive ways to entertain themselves. We will say it very loud and slow. They used to read. They had read and then proceed to read some more. Great Scott, Gadjurks, one half their lives was reading books. The nursery shelves held books galore. Books cluttered up the nursery floor, and in the bedroom by the bed, more books were waiting to be read. Very calmly, the poet recommends the parents to install a lovely bookshelf in place of the monster that is the television, ignoring all objections. He recollects the times when the children were fond of reading. They indulged in incensed reading. Their life was surrounded with books. The nursery shelves and floors were full of books scattered here and there. There were books waiting to be read in the bedroom. The children too took keen interest in reading them. The poet suggests with emphasis that for children, reading book is the best alternative to the harmful practice of watching television. In the past, reading books was an extremely useful, engaging, and productive pastime. He further says that the parents must motivate their children to read real good books in order to entertain themselves. There are so many great books that were readily available in the past and are still there for the children to read and learn from them. Here, Great Scott is referred to Sir Walter Scott, the famous 19th century novelist and poet, who has referred to as the Great Scott in this stanza. He wrote a number of novels that are immensely enjoyed by young and adolescent readers even today. Scott is often regarded as the father of historical novel. Gadjooks is an exclamation of surprise or annoyance. Such wondrous, fine, fantastic tales of dragons, gypsies, queens, and whales, and treasure isles and distant shores, where smugglers rowed with muffled oars, and pirates wearing purple pants, and sailing ships and elephants, and cannibals crouching round the porch, stirring away at something hot. It smells so good. What it can be? God gracious, it's Penelope. In these lines, the poet talks about the great popularity of books due to which their presence was visible literally everywhere. This was because children were very fond of reading them. The number of books was so large that the process seemed to be almost everlasting because there were always some that were waiting to be read. As the poet says, the tales read by children in the past were fantasies with a galaxy of interesting characters. These tales were full of adventures and strange but interesting situations that honed the imagination and creativity of their young readers. The world depicted in the fantasies was based on pure imagination. It had a range of unusual characters and situations to entertain and amuse the young readers. That is why the tales of dragons, gypsies, queens, and whales were the most engaging pastime for children before the invention of television. Today, the programs miss all that as they do not involve creativity and imagination. Through these programs, children can only see what is presented before them in concrete form, but they cannot imagine things, characters, or situations that are seen so abundantly in fantasies and tales of yesteryears. One great advantage of reading books that contain these fantasies is that you can go through them anywhere. This precisely implies that it is not necessary for the readers to sit at a particular place only to read the books. Here again there is a use of parenthesis. It smells so good that can it be? Good gracious, it's Penelope. This is the younger ones had Beatrix Potter with Mr. Todd the Dirty Rotter and Squirrel Nutkin, Pigling Bland and Mrs. Tiggy Winkle, and just how the camel got his hump, and how the monkey lost his rump, and Mr. Todd and bless my soul, there's Mr. Rat and Mr. Mole. Oh, books, what books they used to know, those children living long ago. The poet gets nostalgic speaking about the fantasy characters like Beatrix Potter, Mr. Todd, Squirrel Nutkin, Mr. Tingy Winkle, Mr. Camel, Mr. Rat, etc. The poet says that there are plenty of books which are available for the children for the invention of television. More importantly, they had the freedom to choose books for reading according to their preference and interest matching their age group. The poet lists some of the most popular fictional characters that children in the pre-television era used to read and know about through different books available to them. In the concluding lines of the stanza, he seems to be simply awed by the extraordinary range of their reading and familiarity with comical or fictional characters. Mr. Todd, Squirrel Nutkin, Pigling Bland, Mr. Tiggy Winkle, Mr. Rat, and Mr. Mole are the characters that fascinate small young kids most. Thus, the children the poet talks about here must be small kids passing through the primary stage of learning. As children grow up, they gradually start looking for more mature reading stuff. The famous writer of children's book referred in this stanza is Beatrix Potter. Her name being mentioned particularly suggests that she must have influenced Roald Dahl. She is a natural illustrator, natural scientist, and conservationist, best known for her children's books. So please, oh please, we beg, we pray, go, throw your TV set away, and in its place you can install a lovely bookshelf on the wall. Then fill the shelves with lots of books, ignoring all the dirty looks, the screams and yells, the bites and kicks, and children hitting you with sticks. The poet ardently pleads to the parents to discard their television sets, replacing them with bookshelves. His to parents is propelled by his perception that their children's habit of watching TV for long and continuous hours is dangerous and unproductive. The poet requests the parents to replace their television sets with a bookshelf. The reason lies in his time-tested assumption that books alone will save the natural, imaginative, sensitive, and curiously passionate inner self of a child from the blunting and barren practice of watching television. Thus, the fundamental motive is to save the childhood and ensure that children will have a better future. The poet says that bringing in a bookshelf as a replacement TV may not be tolerated by the children in the beginning. Nevertheless, the parents must remain firm in their decision and overlook any resistance, because a change like this is beneficial for the future of their children. The last two lines or the couplet you can mark: their screams and yells, the bites and kicks, and children hitting you with sticks. This couplet clearly suggests that children will not put up with a change introduced by their parents. In the beginning, they will fail to understand the significance of a bookshelf filled with books. As a result, they will protest against it. Occasionally, they may be violent also. Despite all this, the parents must go ahead with their decision, as they know that this will change the life of their dear kids for the better. Children who are used to watching television cannot understand its advantages themselves. Their parents must therefore take the initiative to change this habit and replace it with a much better and far more beneficial practice of reading books. They should therefore understand that their decision will eventually secure a great future for their children. Fear not, because We promise you that in about a week or two of having nothing else to do, they will now begin to feel the need of having something to read. These lines are addressed to parent exhorts to replace TV sets with books. The poet feels that the parents are apprehensive of this change, which their children may not accept easily. They will now begin to feel the need of having something to read. In these lines, the poet talks about the situation in which children will start realizing the urgency to read something. As he says, this will happen only when TV sets are removed from their and they find it impossible to watch the programs they have been used to watching so far. The poet promises that there will be a positive change in children which he thinks will be noticeable in a period of about a week or two. The poet's approach is thoroughly conversational, and his tone seems to be that of a public speaker addressing a gathering of parents. It reflects a high level of understanding and confidence. It seems that he is fully self-assured and knows that the results knows the results with a remarkable precision. And once they start, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, you watch the slowly growing joy that fills their hearts. They will grow so keen. They will wonder what they had ever seen in that ridiculous machine, that nauseating, foul, unclean, repulsive television screen. And later, each and every kid will love you more for what you did. The poet gets filled with ecstasy to think about the result. He says that once the children begin to read, they will get accustomed to the habit that they will take pleasure in reading. They would feel aroused when they will realize that there was nothing fun coming out of the filthy and disgusting television. And when they will grow up, they will appreciate and will be grateful for saving them from the clutches of the idiotic box and introducing them to the world of books. They will discover the real joy of reading books. Children will gradually understand the joy of reading books and soon will get interested in it. These books will make its own place in their hearts and they will become fond of book reading. Subsequently, showing a mature understanding, they will realize that they had been wasting a lot of their precious time in watching television. The poet thinks that the children will soon realize their parents did a wonderful thing for them by throwing away the television set and instead installing the lovely books to entertain and teach them so much. Due to this, they will love their parents all the more. Two qualities they should have are determination. Determination is required when they decide to replace their children's bad old habits with a far more productive and positive ones. Patience is needed when their decision is resisted by their own children. Furthermore, they should also be absolutely caring and sensitive to the needs of their children. This is what the poet has to say about watching television. The poet says that watching television has lots of negative impact on the children. So the television set must be replaced with a bookshelf. Now this is all about the poem Television. Now your work is to complete the extract of the workbook so that you can better understand the poem. You can be very thorough with the poem and the answers. That's all. Bye-bye.